Thanks, everybody, for joining the How and the Wow podcast. My name is Meg Garvalia, and I'm the founder of Woven Legal. And today's guest, I'm very excited to share with you. He has a career full of experience serving entrepreneurs and business owners globally. And I think it's really exciting the information that he has to share. So, with that, I'll introduce Ken. Ken, thank you for being with us.
I'm happy to be here.
So, I'm going to jump right into the questions that I have for you that I think will most benefit attorneys that are listening. Uh, Ken, for attorneys working with startups or small manufacturers, how would you explain freedom to operate?
Okay, so freedom to operate is something that most attorneys don't run into unless they do international licensing or they're working with big international corporations. Tend not to see it in the US. Um, Let me define, I hate to do this, but a definition of freedom to operate may be helpful. Um, it's the ability to produce, license, or sell raw materials, idea, device, or systems in domestic country or foreign countries. It's usually a problem when you're going international. Okay, so you can file a patent, you get the patent in the US, and then you go to partner or you go to license it. And the licensee, potential licensee is international. And they say, great, have you done a freedom to operate search? Has your patent attorney done a freedom to operate search? Usually the patent attorney does a preliminary when he files, which is very inexpensive. It's $1,500 to $3,000 just to see if there's anything out there,
Okay.
that it's obvious. The freedom to operate full thing is much more expensive. It's 30 to 50. You don't normally do that unless you're getting ready for a deal. And but give you an example. You patent something, you go to partner with somebody,
Mhm.
they want to use it, and then a third party has patented a system with that component in it. They can't practice that without licensing that system, even though you have a patented product and you can't sell it to anybody else. So, two examples. The one I learned the hard way is I ran into a freedom to operate when I was a corporate venture guy.
Okay.
And so I was working, everybody would understand this, Mars Candy. They were trying to do blue M&Ms, and the blue M&M coating wouldn't stick. This is
That's
30 years ago.
yeah.
Okay, so I was at a company that did coatings. And so we worked with Mars to come up with a way to keep the blue coating from peeling off on your hands. But we had to do a trial to get it ready. So we went to a third party equipment vendor that they use who
Mhm.
had a pilot plant. We ran the equipment process there, showed it worked, solved the problem. And the next thing we know, the third party had filed a patent on using equipment to do the coating.
Oh my God.
Okay, so we had a coating patent.
Good.
Mars has the candy, but nobody else but them could use that equipment. So Mars had to buy. Fortunately, Mars bought that. That was their equipment anyway, so it wasn't a restriction. But we could not sell that coating process for that kind of candy without using a third-party equipment.
Wow.
So that's an example of a freedom to operate where we have the coverage, the end user has his product, but
Right.
you get caught in the dilemma of a third party. Okay, so another example is I was working with a nanomaterial for batteries. This is a big deal. So working on anodes, and we took that to Japan to Panasonic. Panasonic says, "Oh, this is great. We're going to license this technology." No, they couldn't because Mitsubishi had filed a patent for a system using nanomaterials for anodes that was broad enough that didn't cover this particular company, but it covered the broad nano. So you had to have the license from the Mitsubishi for Panasonic to use it. This is the freedom to operate. And pharma is one of the worst examples.
Okay.
Okay, so when you do pharma, the pharmaceutical companies are watching all the patents filed by small companies.
Sure.
It's called Edgar. And so they're following, and what they will do is you file a small patent to do something in diagnostics or pharmaceutical, and it's for oncology. They file an oncology patent because that's their area for the whole thing, and they cite your patent. So who can you license to? One company.
Oh, one company because it's included. Oh,
Right. Okay. So freedom to operate, you have to learn how to deal with that. And so then you get back to the question of what kind of patent do you have? Okay, so for your patent examiners, they know how to write their patent. So they write a patent. It's either a process patent, composition patent, or they may have claims for applications. Okay, process patent is the weakest. Everybody knows that. You can reverse engineer that easily.
okay.
Composition matter patent is stronger, and applications patents are needed for licensing. If you don't have the application patents, it gets tougher to license globally. So, but to avoid freedom to operate, because somebody can file in China or in Afghanistan and cause you a problem,
Hmm.
you publish. So if I'm going to go to Europe and I'm going to find a partner and I haven't filed an application, I've got a composition, but I have so many applications I can't cover. I will teach it in the patent because in the patent you can teach, you show applications that it can be used in.
Oh,
It's a typical way of writing, right? So
right,
you teach it in the patent. That helps. That is one less thing that they can file because it's now public, right? But the
right.
other way to do it is if I'm going to Germany or I'm going to work with a German company, I'm going to publish something in German because I don't have the application covered. I file it as like an advertisement or promotion before I go to sell it.
Oh,
Okay. Again, that stops it because now it's public knowledge. So you
right.
have to do a number of things from the freedom to operate. And it's not, trademarks and copyrights run into the same problem.
Okay.
So this is more on anything on IP. This is freedom to operate becomes an issue.
And so those are ways in which you coach your clients in
Correct.
so they can firmly plant their flag.
So when you're coaching your clients, it's a total IP strategy. It's not just patents. So it's publications, trade secrets, copyrights, trademarks, and patents, right? And how do you protect them? So this is just part of the way to protect it, part of the way to go to a market, right? And so that's part of your game, and
Okay.
that's why we really push them to file application patents.
Okay.
That's really a critical aspect because it has more value when you have a market and you've proven it for the end user who comes to you.
Okay. That
Okay,
makes
now here's where the complication comes. I'm going to go work with a big company. You sign an NDA. I've
oh,
got my patent, but
yeah.
I'm going to go for an application area because that's what they're interested in. This is a mess in AI. This is where if you have AI software, it's very
Oh, yeah.
complicated now.
I
Okay,
can imagine.
so we recommend to small clients, and the small patent attorneys should be thinking about this. A provisional patent. You know what a provisional patent is? So a provisional patent is something you file as a preliminary, a stake in the ground for a year in the
Oh,
country you're
right.
in.
Hmm.
Okay,
And we
you
did
have
that.
a year to process it to a full patent.
Okay.
We recommend to clients before they deal with any corporation that's international, whether it's domestic based or not, if they're going to talk to them about oncology or they're going to talk to them about candy, and even though they have maybe a claim in their patent,
Hmm.
file a provisional patent for the area they're going to talk about
Okay.
before they talk to the company.
Uh,
And why do you do that? For two reasons. One, try to protect what you're doing. The second part is you could drop it. If this deal doesn't go anywhere, you could drop it. It's not expensive to find a provisional. It's less than $3,000 or $4,000, but you can drop it in a year. If the deal doesn't go forward, you don't have to go through all the filing anyways, right? But
right.
the other part is assume everything goes well. You sign a license, and there may be exchange of technology going back and forth, or there's a joint venture, or there's joint development. That's
Okay.
the really gets complicated. So you get joint development. So who owns what? So part of the lawyer has to write the agreement of this is our stuff, this is your stuff, but where is it joint? So the provisional patent is to try to get more of that joint covered so you own it. So
So if
recommended always to have a provisional patent for the area you're going to discuss if you're doing partnerships or licensing before you have the meeting.
And it's safe to say that larger corporations know this dance and they're doing it. And so this is a way to help smaller, entities get out in front. And
Well, the other problem for the big companies is they have their own research going. So the complication is they are very worried about liability of a small company suing them. So there are times where they say, "I don't want your IP. I don't want to have it. I don't want to discuss this. We want to discuss it non-IP, non-NDA to see if there's something interested because it will conflict with what we're doing." So
okay.
there, it is. It's not so simple. It's not a. It's not black and white.
It it sounds really complex, which is why you need someone, I would think, who has so many years of experience.
You need in your IP work, you need somebody who thinks strategically. Okay. And so, because it's not just filing patents, it really is helping the client around these issues,
Right. And pave the path to achieving their goal. Um,
maximize their value.
right. And you have the ability to play the tape forward where they are probably really focused on the viability of their product or services or whatever it is they're offering. So what other pitfalls have you encountered or helped grab your clients from and pull them back from near bad experiences?
Okay. So everybody knows China does stealing at the IP, right?
Mhm.
Um, but everybody should understand every large corporation does reverse engineering. And for anyone who doesn't know reverse engineering, it's pretty obvious. We
Right.
take apart whatever your idea is or your product and see if we can produce it without licensing it.
Sure.
Unfortunately, they do this even after they license it. Okay, so somebody licenses your technology and you say, well, I got a 20-year license or I got 15 years left on my patent. Don't assume that. They're going to try to figure a way if this is going to be a big expense for them. They have two ways to do this. They can cap the license, which means they put a maximum how much they're going to pay in royalties.
Okay.
Well, there's one advantage with that you know how much you're going to get, right? Okay. But if they don't cap it, if I'm a big company and it looks like I'm going to pay 50 or 100 million in royalties, I'm going to try to reverse engineer this so I can figure out how to make something around the patent. So after 3 or 4 years, I can drop it.
Huh. And when you say drop it,
I mean, I stop the license. I
okay.
don't need it anymore.
Yes.
Okay,
Wow.
so the small company thinks they have this in the pocket. They got the big company, they got the license. Not so fast.
Mm.
So part of the reason small company could be looking at improvements, okay, to try to make it better and
Course.
but make it more complicated. But remember that other company doesn't want to pay you $100 million.
Oh my
So
God.
if it gets to be that point, they're going to try to reverse engineer it. It's
Yes.
perfectly honest to do that. If you were in those shoes, you'd do the same thing.
Yes.
But you have to assume that that's the case. So you don't have a guarantee on the license that you're going to go the full length of your patent. Just have to assume that. That's where the cap discussions come in. If you cap it, then the risk is already defined and they're not going to go around you then because they've already guaranteed to give you a certain amount of money.
That makes sense, and they can plan for that. Sure.
That's right. Okay,
Okay.
so that's one of the issues in the reverse engineering. And so give you an example of how to avoid reverse engineering. Okay, so I'm a pharma company,
Hmm.
and this is a real example. Eli Lilly.
Hmm.
So Eli Lilly was making their ingredients in India and China. Okay, and they
Hmm.
were making a drug to sell in China. Well, the Chinese companies or the Indian companies copied, reverse engineered. So what Eli Lilly did on this one drug is they bought four ingredients, approved APIs.
Sure.
They bought four ingredients from four different suppliers and they made the drug and then they advertised it. Within a week of producing the product, three Chinese companies had reverse engineered and put it out. The problem was Eli Lilly didn't use all four; they only used three.
That's smart. That is smart. Good for them.
So one of them made the other three ineffective.
Isn't that something? Is that a common practice in the
Well,
industry?
there's deception. You can do that. That's
Sure.
why when they start to do that and they list all these ingredients, that you're never sure.
I so wish I was a fly on the wall when that realization hit, right?
Well, that was I was working cross border with China. I wasn't working on that, but when it came out, I thought that was great. What a creative way to do it.
How about it? I mean, I know IP or, manufacturing espionage is such a big deal. So, yeah, I can imagine. Um, what other pitfalls? I love hearing how you are have helped your clients avoid catastrophe or limited success.
Yeah, trying to think. You have each country is different,
Hmm.
and filing is different,
Yep.
and you got costs that are different. So it's these are issues you have to think about when you're filing. For instance, if you're filing and you're going to do the Middle East, you can't file a PCT. The PCT doesn't cover Middle East countries. There's a separate.
PCT. I need an acronym.
Okay, I don't know what the definition. PCT is international coverage. So it covers. It's an international agreement that if you file a patent, it covers 50, 100 countries.
Okay.
So if you file your first patent, you file it internationally. You file it U.S. And then you file it. I think you have to have a year to file it overseas. And if
Okay.
you file a PCT, and again, I'm not a patent attorney,
Fine.
but that's the term. It covers Europe and Japan, and you can pick countries
Sure.
that it'll cover.
Okay.
But the PCT has a broad covering of countries. Middle East, except for Middle East is not covered. You have to file if you're going to do the Middle East. You have to file separately for that group of countries.
Got it.
And then here's the problem. Okay, so now it comes that year. You've got your patent, and now each country's processing your patent. Once it goes through the country, now you're gonna have to pay a fee in each country. The PCT is great; it just gives you the first part, but now you're gonna have to pay for each country patents if it goes
Oh, wow.
through. It gets
Whoa.
expensive.
It gets really expensive, I'm sure.
Okay, so now from a marketing standpoint, let's talk about marketing from IP because people use IP for marketing. Okay, I file a PCT patent and it covers most, forget the Middle East. So we're talking Japan, we're talking Europe, Korea, right? And I start to get granted patents in Japan and in Germany and stuff. And I don't have anybody in Japan.
Hmm.
I don't announce I dropped the patent, but I drop it.
Oh,
So somebody has to do the work. I've already filed and the PCT's out there, but I don't tell them when I drop it. It's a delay.
can you renew them as
No,
well?
once you do that, you're out of it because it's now public knowledge, right? Because you've
Oh,
delayed
good
it,
point.
right?
Yeah,
But you don't tell them,
right.
so you're in the market,
Yep.
and you may not need the IP at this point.
Yep.
Okay, so in commodity items and retail, that may be just enough to get in the market. So patent applications are used for marketing to get in the market, and then slowly, quietly, the patents go away. You're in the market, you don't need it, right?
That makes.
So, prime example, and you and I've talked about this. If you pull a wrench, you buy
Yeah.
those little wrenches that you have the little buttons to tighten it around, and
Yep.
you look on it, you're going to see patent pending. Well, it hasn't been pending for 20 years. When they applied for it, they dropped it, but it's still there on that.
They just
Okay,
haven't taken
so
it.
you just take it. So they that was their marketing play. They did file, whoever the company that originally made that wrench filed for patents,
Yep.
and somewhere along the line they made their penetration or they sold it, whatever, and they didn't need the patents. They just dropped it, but
Yep.
it's still there. It says patent pending.
Yes. That
Now, that
is
doesn't
really,
necessarily, by the way, patent pending may be real. It could take 10 years to get a patent through in some countries. So it's not a given, it's not there. But in that case, it was purely a marketing play.
that is a great story and instance that you shared. Reverse engineering is a word that lately brings to mind bad actors, potentially China, as you described. working to steal U.S. ideas for products and technology, for example. Can you share the legitimate ways it's used in innovation or partnership strategy, and what small company leaders and their legal counsel need to understand about the boundaries? I may re-record that. I'm just saying. Anyway,
Okay, well, reverse engineering is perfectly legal. And
okay.
if whether I'm a small company or a large company, I don't want to pay royalties.
Mhm.
Okay. And if I can avoid it, I'm going to do that. And so this is where the IP gets really important. And we go back to what kind of patent it is, or what kind of copyright, or what kind of trade secrets it is. If it's pretty obvious, even though, remember that, well, let's go for the first base. Patent goes through, gets processed, and it's approved. It's not valid yet until it goes to a court. In a court, 70% of the patents are not valid.
Huh.
It's a very high percentage when it goes to a court, because it doesn't go to patent court, it goes to a commercial court.
Um,
And when it gets ruled on, 70%. That's why people settle. They
yeah.
don't go to court. If they have a conflict, if they have two companies fighting it out, they'll try to find a settlement because they may lose the patent.
Oh, that
But if
makes
it goes to court and it's validated, then you're very strong. But 70% don't pass that test. So this, it's there's your first challenge, right?
right.
So then on the reverse engineering part, you just have to assume everybody's going to try to do that. I mean, if your idea is so easy, that's why it goes back to, it's a process patent, very easy to reverse. Meaning you can figure out a way to, if you're making cookies, and we've had this trouble with Hydrox with Oreos. If you
Oh,
know, if you're from the East Coast,
I
Hydrox was the first cream cookie. Oreos copied it, reversed it, changed the cream, and they're the dominant player. And Hydrox doesn't even exist practically, but it was Hydrox that first developed that cookie.
I did not know. That is
So, so
something.
it's it's a given that if you're in something, that somebody's going to try to reverse engineering or improve it. It's called improvement.
Right.
They don't call it a better product, right?
Yep.
And so, but it's just assumption. So if your trade secrets, that's why people keep trade secrets, so they don't put it all in the patent.
Okay.
Um,
That makes
because,
sense. Like the Coca-Cola formula here
that's
in
right,
Atlanta. Yeah.
right. So process patents are the easiest to reverse. Composition patents are why they're paying more for that.
Okay.
And application patents cover an area that, even though you don't have everything covered, you've got the application
Good.
and you can keep filing on it.
Good. Good.
So we try to, when we're looking at companies to partner, we're looking at their IP. We're not in the IP business. They're already a company coming to us. But if it's process patents, we try to encourage them to do IP on applications. Can't change anything on the composition. It's too late.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so strongly recommend, if patent attorneys are working with companies, they know this already.
Right.
Process is the weakest, so they really wanted to strengthen the composition and application patents
Okay.
and the teachings if they're not going to find applications.
So where does your business come from? Do the companies reach out? Do their attorneys reach out? And at what juncture are you brought in?
Okay, so we're most investment bankers for small companies are
Mhm.
brought in for transactional purposes, not for planning. We're too late.
Right.
Normally, the small company doesn't think about this. They're not prepared to sell. Somebody calls, says, "Would you be interested in selling your company?" Whoops, right? That's one way. And so, well, how do we do this? So they look for somebody like us. The second way is, got three partners. It's growing. One wants to grow internationally. One likes it just the way it is, and one wants to get out.
Got it.
Okay, so that's another way they'll hire an investment banker to figure it out. Either just buy out the shares, or let's just sell it because it's just easier. Okay. Third one, which is a little bit worse, it's run by one family, and the patriarch or the matriarch dies.
Okay.
Three people who the family's been in it don't know how to run it. And third generation, that's where things really get complicated. And
Yes.
so they have to sell, or the trustee has to force the sale.
Okay.
Okay, so medical reason, whatever reason.
Sure.
Divorce is another reason.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so all those are the reasons you sell, but it could be selling. An innovator builds a company and they start with a great idea, but they're not in the growth business. They're not in the maintenance business, right? They've
They've a
grown
big.
it to a certain level, right? So they've grown from a startup to 20 million.
Mhm.
That innovator may be bored by this time. Now it's same old stuff,
Mhm.
may want to sell. Okay. And that's when it's changeover, right? So that's another time where somebody's going to sell.
Got it. Good, good. And then the scope of your services is more, though, than just an investment banker. I've known many, and your experience is much more the coach, the consultant
Well,
to,
now that gets you more into the fundraising because we're not in this just the sell business. If we're in the
right.
growth business, right? So we're getting a company that wants to grow and they need money
Sure.
to grow and they don't want to sell. And so we are then brought in to bring in monies, and a lot of that money comes international.
There we
Okay,
go.
so then because they want to go to international markets, they want a strategic partner or whatever, and so there's money that way. So yeah, so we're in that strategy business for the growth.
Okay.
Okay, we don't get a chance if they just want to sell.
Got
They're it's all transactional. If
right.
we can find in some of our, we're very focused on certain industries. We don't do any retail or commercial or real estate, so we're all industrial. Sometimes, as you asked, lawyers, board members call us to come in,
Right.
maybe early. And so we'll come in about 2 years early and say, we want to review. We don't know if we're going to sell yet or we don't partner. Tell us what we need to do. So we may guide them on this is what you don't want to do. This is what you do want to do. These are the targets, and then back off.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll keep us on, come in periodically for review so they don't make a mistake. But if we get that, we're great. But 80% of the time, we get called in, it's too late to do that.
I,
There are more consultants that do that on the strategy side before we get to it.
okay. Perfect. And can you name an instance where people tried to do it themselves and problems ensued? Certainly the descriptions that you gave and when you reviewed the pitfalls, but do you have an instance where you just know your services just made for very happy clients?
Okay, so there's no magic. It's just if you want to look at the investment bank, okay, I'm going to get a definition separately, but if you want to look at it, a company, an individual, managed president could run the process and do a licensing or an M&A by themselves
Hmm.
with their team. Why do you hire a third party? Because if you do that, it's almost 100% of your time, and you got to take your time away from your business. And you don't want to see the business level up. You want it to still grow while you're doing this. The other part is you're going to go out to 20 to 30 to 40 people. And we're not talking about a broad auction. We're talking about targeted.
Sure.
And that means a whole bunch of screening, and only 4 or 5 are going to be real. And
Got it.
if you're doing this full time or your staff is doing it full time, you're not doing the business. So it's a trade off. There's no magic. I mean, the advantage of taking a third party is that they, especially focused on their industry, is
Mhm.
they know the people who your potential buyers are. They can get to them. Okay, just as easily you, but they're known. So when we do something like we're one of the leaders in industrial 3D printing. So if you go in for a spine piece, or if you're going to go for your teeth, and they make the printing, like if you go in for a knee, the 3D printing. And this is industrial, not commercial.
Okay.
You go to the doctor, they take your site and they send it to one of our clients who we've worked with. They print it and send it back to the doctor to insert it in 72 to 96 hours. Okay, so that kind of stuff um, is specialized.
Mhm.
Okay, so if it's specialized, we know all the players. So if you're selling in that area, then the advantage is we can call vice president of corporate development at company A and B and C. You can call them. They may not know you.
Right.
We already dealt deals with. Okay,
Uh,
so when you're looking for somebody who's doing a third party, you want somebody with expertise in the industry. So you wouldn't want to hire a group that has not done AI if you're an AI.
Absolutely.
Okay, so because you want the help, because you can do it yourself. If you have to teach them, what are you gaining?
And you want a guide. I know for myself, during the whole process of, selling Woven Legal recently, it was such great assurance to have someone to guide us.
Yeah, well, if it's a commodity area, it's not. So we there the landscape is business brokers and investment bankers.
Mhm.
Business brokers sell a lot of the commercial businesses, your pharmaceuticals,
Right.
your retail stores, and they can cover big companies, so they can maybe have 10 stores, right?
Yep.
And they may do some distribution and manufacturing. The investment bankers tend to get into more of the technology areas. They deal more with IP. Business brokers don't get to deal as much with IP technology, but it's so crowded you can't tell that, right?
Right.
Um, and then we're registered. So under SEC to raise funds, you have to be a registered broker.
Okay. Good, good.
Okay. If you're selling a company, you don't have to be.
Oh.
If you're selling a company that is asset based, you're selling an asset,
Hmm.
you and I can sell it.
Sure. And
No,
act
no, we can act as consultants and say, we'll help you sell it. You don't have to have a license.
wow. That's
Okay. Well, that's good and bad, but you can get an expert in that area and may know all the companies. So that may work out. But as soon as you have to do stock
oh
or
yeah,
you have to do raising, then it gets a little more complicated.
got it. Well, Ken, I am so grateful for your experience, and I know our listeners are too. If someone wants to engage with you and connect with you, how should they reach you?
Well, you have my email and my phone number, and that'd be perfectly fine. And our
Put it
website is up is www.newcap.com.
good, good,
So they can reach me at epstein@newcap.com,
great.
and we can help it. I'm always willing to, if they have a question, happy to do that. Like I said, we do devil's advocate. We work with lawyers,
Mhm.
is we screen. So in the recent case, a lawyer called me and says, we have a potential client in nanotechnology, but we're not sure they're so early, we may not be able to help them. How real is their technology? Is it something we want a continuous client? We don't want something that's one off.
Right.
And so I looked at their client, the potential client. I said, no, they're far enough along. It's a crowded space, but it's a possibility. So they picked them up as a client.
Good. Okay, that's helpful. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing a little thimbleful of information that you know and in your career that you gathered. And we are grateful for your time
Well,
and
thank you very much. It was always a pleasure.